Hello, everyone. For episode 3, bringing you Bill Sullivan, Executive Vice President, Business and Technology Discovery at FLEXcon. So for anybody interested in adding more functional technologies to films and coatings, this is the podcast for you, talking about all the capabilities at FLEXcon, some of the interesting things that they're doing to bring new technology to the forefront and use their capabilities to help brand owners launch products faster. So without further ado, here is Bill Sullivan from FLEXcon, episode 3, Better Products Podcast. Thanks. Thanks for joining me, Bill, on episode 3. This should end up being episode 3. And so excited to have you on. And I'll just give you a quick intro, and then I'll kind of let you take over and give yourself, your own intro. But Bill Sullivan, Vice President, Performance Products at FLEXcon, overseeing a business team, Performance Products, I believe it's still called Performance Products, that is responsible for the development, marketing, and commercialization of high-performance adhesives, functional coatings, film castings, and the creation of functional microstructures, which I'm excited to hear more about. And recently, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but board chairman of the Massachusetts MEP, which is the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. I saw that press release. So that's what I have written down, and I guess I'll let you jump in, tell us about yourself, FLEXcon, and I guess the Functional Technologies Division.
Okay, so thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I consider this kind of an honor. I've known you for a few years now, and certainly your entrepreneurial spirit and your willingness to try new things is exactly what technology startup community needs. So appreciate the opportunity. I've actually got an upgrade to my position, and I'm now the Executive Vice President of Technology and Business Discovery. So you could see how the business team has evolved from when I first met you to where we are today, and it's all because of what you and I are passionate about, which is helping advance new technologies. So a little bit about FLEXcon. So FLEXcon is a graphics and label manufacturer, films for those businesses. The division I manage is the Functional Technologies Group, the new business and technologies, but I don't think we can talk about FLEXcon without talking about Tapecon, because I think, and you would probably know this better than me, but Miles and your grandfather had a relationship years and years and years ago. And so the FLEXcon Tapecon relationship goes back a long, long way. And I've known your father for years and have known you for a number of years as well. So if your grandfather was anything like your father and you, I can understand why Miles found a connection to your grandfather. So glad to be on your podcast.
Wow, that's awesome. I should have maybe called my father in advance and asked him maybe some stories that I should have came a little bit more prepared to tell.
You don't need to ask many stories. But I tell you, I used to love going up there because I'd go in your father's office and we'd be talking about what project he was working on, what new technology he was looking at. So I always found it interesting to go up there and sit down and talk to your father.
I remember hearing a story. I think it was like the 1 millionth order or some type of milestone in a FLEXcon order that happened to be placed by Tapecon, and then Miles' son came down and had some type of shindig or party with our team. I remember a few of our older employees mentioned that to me a while back, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, nice.
I appreciate that. In terms of markets, so I guess what markets does FLEXcon's material science capabilities, I guess, support? If you kind of go through that for us.
Yeah, so the markets we tend to play in are more what we call technologically advanced. So we're doing a lot in aerospace. We're doing a lot in medical. We do have some industrial type applications, but I would primarily say, certainly clean energy is an area where we play. So new technologies, technologies that we're trying to focus on today are more purposeful technologies that will have an impact in people's lives. So Again, environmental type of technologies, green type of technologies, those type of things are ones we're looking at. I'll tell you, the beginning of this group started with a passion in, so let me give you a little bit of background. So we, like you, do what we would call contract business, where somebody will ask us if they can rent our machines, or somebody will ask us to coat some of their materials. And the more and more we did that, the more and more we realized how exciting new technology was and what type of technologies were coming through the door. So over the last number of years, we've taken that and said, how can we be proactive? How can we go out and find those people that need manufacturing assets and not just waiting for them to come and knock on our door? So that's really how this whole technology and business discovery group started, is through our custom coding type of work.
I watched the video on the functional materials website, and so that's saying, I think, a lot of what you're talking about, where I feel like, moving from selling features and benefits and just saying, hey, we're a contract manufacturer, we have all these capabilities, go fish. And as opposed to just doing that, really going out, thinking about the problems that you're trying to solve, reel people in and get behind that. And then, of course, wrapping it up with just obviously a good, meaningful work reason to do it is exciting. And the video does a really nice job.
Yeah, thank you. So everybody has matrices that they evaluate an opportunity. And I'll share with you as soon as it gets more work done on it, but we have what's called a purposeful scale. So we'll measure technology by its impact on purpose. Purpose in people's humans' lives, purpose on the environment, purpose on different things. So it's kind of an interesting scale model we're using now when incoming technology comes in. So
no, I like that. Yeah, usually you look at a matrix when you assess, it's like effort, impact, revenue, profit.
Right.
Purpose is probably something not a lot of people are using. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I might have to definitely take that one inside. I like that one.
Yeah.
Well, hey, how else are you going to know whether or not you're in a line with it, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
Constant reminder on an opportunity by opportunity basis that, there's a greater worthwhile work behind it all.
Right.
I appreciate you also updating me on your title, because one of the questions that I had here next was, what value does a manufacturer bring to new technology development? Because I feel like, as you mentioned, swimming upstream a little bit and really going to the sources of innovation, getting closer to where innovation's occurring, but then in a way concierging that through to a brand owner. Can you talk more about that?
I can. I've been preaching this for a number of years. I think manufacturing is the hidden gem for most technologies. I think that I could go on for a long time talking about the value that manufacturers bring, but I'll list a couple of them. Certainly, their ability to take a idea and a concept and bring it to commercial feasibility is probably the biggest one. And bring it to scale. I think that a lot of technology companies have a lot of resources at their disposal. They just don't necessarily have manufacturing at their disposal. Again, just the manufacturing systems, the processes, the way, the quality systems that exist in a manufacturer that are needed in order to bring something to commercial success, I think is critical to technology companies as well. And I guess the third one I would say is just the resources manufacturers have. I mean, we consider Tapecon a valuable resource with capabilities that we do not have. We're a roll-to-roll manufacturer. I would consider you guys almost a roll-to-roll manufacturer, even though you have many more assets. But you have equipment and pieces of equipment that I don't have. And so having those relationships are critical in helping to advance a technology along the way. Because sometimes somebody will need something die cut, or somebody will need something packaged, or somebody will need something printed. We don't have those capabilities at FLEXcon. So having those with a company like Tapecon and being able to share a new technology and partner on bringing an idea to commercial success, I think is a valuable asset that a lot of manufacturers have, not just FLEXcon, but a lot of manufacturers. And then I guess the last part is the skill set of our employees. I mean, you've had employees that have been there for years. We've had employees that have been there for years. We know about materials. We know what's worked in other applications. We know what our machines are capable of doing. I'll just give you an example. Those machines at FLEXcon that make label stock and graphic films, we're making ion lithium batteries. We're making solar sails. We're doing things on those machines that they necessarily weren't intended to be used for, but because we've had operators running those machines, they know how to manipulate the machines to give us a coating thickness or give us a capability that we wouldn't have envisioned 20 years ago. And that's true for you too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that I can comment on that, on what you just said. First of all, it's absolutely serendipitous because even from my perspective, you get a brand owner that comes in, they've got it proven in a lab, say an aqueous-based coating or some type of thing that, but say it's in a gel form, you know what I mean? But and then they need to get it in the form of a film or whatever, or a specialty coating, and that supply chain partner relationship between our companies to be able to then send them up the chain to a company like FLEXcon to get that in the form factor that's more cost effective, scalable, and then we can just spec that right in as on the bill of material, source of supply, and do it the right way. You know what I mean? Not trying to pigeonhole into a or create new processes. I mean, we all have existing capability, but how can we best repurpose it and then just get it out the most cost effective too? The other comment I wanted to make was when you were talking about, I guess, capabilities in technology development with intellectual property. It's like, I feel like there's a lot of intellectual property out there and everyone says, oh, there's IP, but there's a big difference between IP and commercially feasible IP.
Absolutely.
and,
Absolutely.
and they're completely two different ball games, right? And that's where I like the manufacturing involvement in early stage development, because then it's like, well, listen, let's just get down to what's actually feasible. And you can quickly separate the two.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
We could definitely continue on that, but I'll jump into another question here. But on your website, I like that there's like a functions page and you can kind of see all the functions.
Yep.
So, I mean, can we talk more about, what are some of those functions that you can enable or, really enhance a product that's being developed by a product team? I mean, because, people are generally looking for something flexible. They know they might want a film or an overlaminate or a coating, but they might not have an understanding of just how much we're really pushing the envelope in terms of the functions that we can do. And as you mentioned, you're doing a lot on your pieces of equipment and you're experimenting with a lot of different things and getting access to different IP that's coming out there. So you're able to converge all those together and make some new things. So I just want to talk about what new functions what envelopes you're pushing on the function side.
So let me tell you some of the capabilities that we have. You could probably go on and on and on about the capabilities that Tapecon has as well. But so laminating is one of our core capabilities, always has been. So we're able to take similar and dissimilar films, combine them together to make one film. So I'll give you an example. We make a 40 mil step tread for an automotive company, and we couldn't buy at the time a 40 mil film. So we laminate a series of 4 mil films together, or 8 mil films together, to build up a bundle of 40 mils, so that we can emboss it and create the finished product that's needed. So again, we can create similar and dissimilar films for function. So we could take a metallized film, PET, and laminate it to a vinyl. We could take a high temperature film and laminate it to a inexpensive carrier to give you a nice buildup of a high temperature film. Those are just some examples of our laminating capabilities. Certainly, FLEXcon's been around 65 plus years. Coating is our forte. I always tell people we can coat any liquid. So we've coated paint, we coat Miracle Grow, we coat Murphy's oil soap, we coat anything with a liquid on any type of substrate. And our capabilities are pretty unique now that we've pushed the envelope, especially with some aerospace applications. We're able to make 1/10 of a mil product. That's almost like a ribbon. So we usually cast that onto a thicker film so it can be worked with. But a good example of that is some of these high altitude devices you see, thin gauge films that FLEXcon's made that have been metallized. So that's a capability as well. And then I'll just mention one more is, and it's my passion, it's the micro texturing. And so FLEXcon has been interested in the science of biomimicry for years. And so we're able to micro image really small images down to 100 nanometers in size. And so we actually just got a new machine that gave us a new capability with a new technology to create these functional microstructures. So we're finding that technology and functional microstructures growing a lot. We're the only ones making microfluidics in plastic, roll to roll. Today it's done etched glass with lasers. So you can just from a manufacturing perspective, understand the value of the economy of scale and cost. We've created the topography of a moth's eye that's currently in outer space on a satellite collecting sun at different angles to power a solar cell. So we're kind of excited about some of the microstructure work that we're doing. So more to come on that.
Yeah, no, I obviously I've heard a lot of, the website does a good job. As I've said, we've spoken about a lot of these projects.
Right.
And where, I mean, I don't want to speak too much about kind of where all these ideas are coming from, but obviously with all this new capability, the markets have to be, pretty vast. I mean, can you, and I'm not sure if I don't think we really covered this in detail, but what specific market verticals are you finding yourself in with all these new capabilities and bringing some of these new technologies into play?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest right now is medical. I think in our micro world, it's more in the medical microfluidics. We're experimenting right now. First time it's ever been done. First time it's being announced on your podcast. But we're able to make functional micro needles. So micro needles in the medical community is huge because now you can deposit chemistries under the skin without actually using a real needle. So we're able to do that roll to roll. And again, I can't say enough about the value of roll to roll processing. I mean, that just brings the economics of a new technology into more commercial feasibility than any other piece of equipment out there today.
Let's talk about, first of all, I didn't even know that, so we're going to have to talk more about that offline. But let's talk about the product teams. This podcast is really trying to aim at the product teams, the engineers, the product manager, the buyer who's looking to commercialize a product. And I don't care whether that's a startup or an existing business that's looking to spin up a product line extension or enhance a product or enter a new market or whatever. So I guess if you're a product team, how would you best identify product requirements when engaging in contract coding or contract manufacturing? I think maybe in that answer, it might be good for you to, I guess, educate some folks on, when you talk about toll coding versus contract manufacturing, and I guess the two different ways that a product team could engage a company like FLEXcon to, get some product back that's going to help their product.
That's a good question, and there's all sorts of different definitions. We define toll coding as somebody actually more like renting our machine. So we have customers that will bring in their own liquid chemistries, their own composite material, and we're just like a per hour rate on running our machines. Custom coding is taking a part of their components, but they maybe need to rely on some raw material from our end. So somebody might bring in a composite material, but they like the performance of one of our adhesives. So we'll coat it with one of our adhesives. Similar to you know what I mean? They might bring in a substrate that they want printed, but you would supply the inks because you know you have inks that will stick to those substrates. So that's how we differentiate the two. But you ask a good question. When we consider a toll coating or custom coating job, the first thing we look at is our capability, because we do not want, we want to move as fast as we can through the process. So we'll take a look first at seeing if we even come close to having the capability. Then I think the second thing, the most important thing, is understanding their requirements, and not just their requirements, but the function they're trying to get out of the product. Because we've had many technology companies, especially in the microstructure arena, where they want their microstructure to be pointed because it's going to serve a certain function. Well, in the manufacturing process, maybe it comes out not as pointed, but it still serves the function. So understanding that upfront is probably the most critical, because what you don't want to do is be working on a project that's not going to go anywhere. Even though you might be getting funding, it doesn't do any good for you, and it certainly doesn't do any good for the client. And then I guess the third part of that is certainly the employee safety. So if we're bringing in especially a liquid or an unknown composite material, we have a pretty robust safety and environmental group at FLEXcon. We have some protocols where those type of things have to pass through our stage gate before we even take a look at putting them in, even on site. So we've had customers send in material that unfortunately we had to put on hold until safety and environmental gave us the approval to bring it in. So those are kind of important elements in even considering a toll coating or contract coating piece of business.
Well, it's a good point you make too on the toll coating, because the brand owner might not realize that if they're, inventing some chemistry that's going to perform in certain ways, it's their responsibility to get that safety data sheet
Absolutely.
in order and
Yep.
sent in advance. I mean, we can't receive chemicals that we don't know what's in them, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of definitely a toll gate that you have to go through, and any good safety program would have a process control in place to not allow that chemistry in the factory. But sometimes it's tough, right? You're at early stage development, you're changing a lot of things, but at some
Yep.
point you got to draw a line in the sand, get that SDS created and get that in, and then get
Absolutely.
going. So
Yep, absolutely.
it's nice to have the little safety tip out there. I think a lot of people don't realize that. We've ran into that a couple times where, oh, I'm just going to send that over. It's like, hold up,
Yeah,
where's the SDS?
absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess you're well trained. That's good. Your safety team would be proud. Along the lines of, when someone wants to do if someone wants to do contract manufacturing, in this situation where they're not supplying a product to you, and so there's still some unknowns in terms of what other materials in the construction they might need. FLEXcon has a big portfolio: adhesives, films, coatings, whatnot. So what are some of the considerations that someone should have in just selecting those other types of materials? And I know for some people, we haven't really gone back to the whole films 101 or adhesives 101, and I don't want to go all the way back there, but I think it would be good on the film side particularly to talk about what are the characteristics of different types of high-level films, and what are some of the considerations when selecting a film. And I'm talking mostly like from polyester to vinyl to polypropylene, polyethylene, whatever, and just high-level considerations of those films, and maybe where they would play into a consideration.
Yep. So I will give you my take on it, and it's a rookie speaking now. We actually have at FLEXcon a films lab and an adhesive lab with much more educated professionals that could talk to this subject matter better than I can. But I will tell you, when we get applications, and so FLEXcon has probably every type of plastic you would need for an application. So we're a plastic roll-to-roll manufacturer. We have competitors that do plastic and paper. We primarily, well, I would say 99% is plastic. Now we'll do other roll-to-roll films as well, or composites, like we'll coat foils, we'll coat foams. So we do have all those in our portfolio as well, but the majority of them are plastics. So choosing the right plastic is an interesting point. So most of the technology people we're dealing with are concerned about things like heat stability, or they're concerned about shrinkage of the film, or they're concerned about outdoor weatherability, or they're looking for chemical resistance. So anything to do with the film's function is usually the questions we get on, say, a particular application. From an adhesive side, it ranges all the way from, super removable to it's going to grip like grim death. And so FLEXcon probably has about 360 adhesives in their portfolio that run that whole range. Some of the unique adhesives we have, though, actually, again, they're functional adhesives, flame retardant adhesives, adhesives that dampen certain noise and vibration at certain frequencies and certain temperatures. So we have those in our portfolio. So those are just a couple of examples of some type of questions we get from technology companies where, to your point, we can help them decide what's the right film, what's the right adhesive to help them in their particular application.
Yeah, which is, I guess, the more standard products that you might need to deliver the rest of the solution. There might be, and I guess back to innovation, like we've been talking a lot of new innovative things. You still need to, I guess, attach or bond or
Right.
put it into the end use application. And sometimes that particular innovation is just a piece of the story. So,
Yep.
Last question, and we'll kind of wrap up, but can you share some models used by FLEXcon that have been successful? We've been talking about innovation, whether it's a startup or an existing company looking to create a new functional material, whether it's, as we talked about, a toll manufacturing relationship where it's some customer supplied innovation that's more renting the machine, or FLEXcon's playing a larger role in that. But what can you speak to anything, I guess, without going into detail of specific success stories, but from a model's perspective, how success is?
Yep, that's a good point. So we use a, I just updated it again today. We probably have about 20 different models that we use in this technology and business discovery group. Anywhere from networking with tech startup companies to work we're doing through the national labs. We have a couple programs going on with the national labs. Certainly, the university community is a great community to tap into. Incubators. So we have a number of incubators here in Massachusetts. I know you have some incubators in New York. Tapping into the entrepreneurs in those incubators are a great opportunity. We do a lot of prototype work. So somebody comes to us with a new technology, they're not quite ready to bring it to commercial success yet. We'll do some prototyping for them. So we do a lot of prototype work. Grants, we're involved in grants. We just received a couple of federal grants recently in this division. And that's great networking because you get to understand, some of the players that are involved in federal grants and who they're involved in. So those are just some of the many different models. Not one model fits all, that as well. I guess the other thing, the other model is not only the right to manufacture, but the right to sell. So a lot of these technology companies have excellent technologies. I congratulate them every time I meet them, but they don't necessarily know not just how to make it, but how to bring it to market. And I think with the resources that manufacturers have, that's a great resource for them to use. So I'll give you an example. There's a company we have a great relationship, a technology company called Nexol. And so Nexol is heavy into aerospace type applications. So we actually make a product for them today that they sell into the aerospace community. But it has certain unique features that would be interesting to FLEXcon customers. So for instance, they have a chemistry that has great UV durability up to 20 years outdoors. It's space qualified. They think you need that in space, great UV protection, okay? So they allow us to offer that product to our customer base as maybe the best overlaminating film you ever wanted to buy. And as long as we don't interrupt them in their space that they're going into in aerospace, that's a win-win, because it's a new technology we can put in our portfolio, and it gives them a revenue stream that they wouldn't have ordinarily had. So again, it's a great win-win for technology companies, especially to let manufacturers like you and me bring their technology to market.
Yeah, and it also kind of shows some of the excitement that you get being part of a contract manufacturing organization, because you're not kind of dedicated to one particular vertical. So you can take that technology and then slice it up by field of use. And hey,
Right.
why should the party stop, in space,
Absolutely.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
this thing can be used in other places, so you
Right.
kind of shoot that out there and see if something sticks, right? So
Right. And
no,
it's a
I
value
appreciate that
because a
point.
lot of customers are looking for new technologies that will do something. So yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like now more than ever, people are looking to converge technologies too. There's just a lot of good ideation workshops, and as you mentioned, incubators, people doing some pretty interesting things and testing assumptions. And so why not just put all those technologies, on the table
Right.
and see what works, right?
Right. Yep. Yep.
It's amazing how fast time flies, because I feel like we flew through this. I felt like we only talked for 10 minutes, but that's it. You know what I mean?
We're definitely going to get on a call after this and talk some more in a couple of weeks.
No, for sure. And no, there's a lot more to talk about. So, thanks for coming on the podcast. I'm hoping that people obviously are going to get a lot out of just completely different perspectives on some of the functional stuff that's going on with you, and plus just some of the concepts that you brought in. I think, some people are thinking that way. Others might not even know what resources are available, or that manufacturers are even looking to play that role. So all good stuff. Really appreciate your comments. And thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate the invitation.
Thanks.